truth, logic, common sense, that gut feeling, and yes, even a little psychoanalysis, as we are once again together, you and I, to discuss what would Tim Ballard do for God, right? What is Tim Ballard going to give the world? This man who's been lifted up time and time again with his books at Deseret Books. He was shoved down the throat of so many people. The hero, the Mormon hero. That's just my opinion, right? Well, the last time we got together, we went over a legal document of a statement from a woman who's being labeled WW, which I said, let's call her Wanda. Today, another lawsuit has dropped, and this woman is AA, and we're going to call her Amy. I do not know these women's names, but just to make it a little, I guess, a little more smooth on speaking about it, Amy is her name, and she has absolutely given a legal statement in a lawsuit, another lawsuit. And they're going to continue to come, y'all. The question really is, does these women want to make all this up? Is there nothing that can be corroborated? Well, before I get into Amy's statement here, she has said that there were reoccurring comments made to her by Tim Ballard. It's in the legal documents. You can look it up online. And I'm going to go through these. And I have a purpose for everything I do. You'll see where we're going. One of the reoccurring comments told to Amy by Tim Ballard was traffickers can smell pheromones. Pheromones, okay. What is it about some of these people that want to talk about adrenaline and all this other biological and chemistry stuff that goes on in the human body? What is the deal with that? I mean, are there people out here going on stage talking about you can harness your adrenaline so you can feel high all the time? And here we have Tim Ballard talking about pheromones. And for people that don't know what pheromones are, it's a natural scent that people give off, and it is related to sex, okay? Another reoccurring comment that Tim Ballard would tell Amy is, we're doing this for the greater good. We're doing this for the greater good. All of these things that Tim Ballard asks these women to do, specifically this Amy, this AA woman, it's for the greater good. Well, wonder if Chad and Lori Daybell was doing everything they were doing for the greater good, huh? Was that what their whole motif was? This is for the greater good. How about this is all for the new covenant, Tim Ballard would say over and over to this woman. What is the new covenant? Does this have anything to do with Tim Ballard telling everybody that he is ushering in the coming of Jesus Christ? That he's going to be the Mormon prophet? What the hell? And what about Chad and Lori? Were they ushering in a new covenant? Huh? Boy, this sounds so familiar. Also, Tim Ballard told this woman, and other women have confirmed this as well, that he sees angels all around him. Well, doesn't that kind of hearken to Lori talking about something going through one wall of the temple and out the other, and that angels help her get these names on the computer? Oh, Lori, she can go get in the shower, and she can come back to her computer, and all the names have been put there by angels. Give me a break. Tim told this woman over and over again that his wife, Catherine, chose this woman. No wonder if Chad told Lori that Tammy, Tammy's off on her other mission now. She's off somewhere. And Tammy would have... And what about Lori? Didn't Lori tell Charles that Lori and Tammy were great friends, which was a crock of shit? But it wouldn't surprise me one bit that Chad Daybell told Lori that Tammy knew. And I don't believe that Tammy knew that she was going to be murdered or that she was going to be replaced by that hussy. But Tim Ballard has said that his wife chooses this woman for what? For what? Also, Tim Ballard said, these aren't our real bodies, he tells this woman. Jesus gave us our bodies to use like this. Like what, Tim Ballard? Well, I guess we'll find out in Amy's statement, won't we? But Jesus gave us our bodies to use like this, referring to the couple's ruse. Well, there's your answer. Our bodies are a tool, says Tim Ballard. Well, I'll tell you what is it, Lori and Chad and these other freaks in this cult talking about turning into translated beings? Lori and Zulima's periods, monthly periods, were starting to get worse or whatever. Give me a break. Tim Ballard says, I would do anything to save a child. How far would you go? And I guess the question really is Chad and Lori, how far would they go to quote unquote save the children, unquote? Oh, the children needed saving. They had evil, dark zombies in them. How far would Lori and Chad and the rest of this freaked out cult, how would they go? How would they go? What would they do? Tim told this woman that Janet and Lori, which were two psychics, okay? We know of this Janet, this freaked out freak show woman, Janet Rousson. But there was another one. Janet and Lori said, you would never turn on me. So Tim Ballard's telling this woman, who we're fixing to read her statement, that his psychics have told him that this woman will never turn on him. And she should believe that, right? Well, I guess the question really is how much did Lori and Chad believe in one another? How about their cult members there that were licking their asses, basically, worshiping Chad and Lori? Do not put confidence in man. You are the only one who could ruin me, says Tim Ballard. He wants to isolate this woman. He wants to know that if he gets ruined, it'll be all her fault. Well, I'll tell you what, Tim Ballard. You've got women lining up to damn blow your ass out of the water. And Tim said, I wanted to put a bullet in my brain before I met you, he says to this woman. Isn't this supposed to be the Mormon prophet or the president of the United States or a U.S. senator, the Mormon Messiah who's got all the backing of Russell M. Ballard and he wants to kill himself? That makes a lot of sense now, doesn't it? And finally, Tim's reoccurring comments to AA, which we will call her Amy, is I will put a bullet in my brain if you ever leave me. And in parentheses, it says he constantly told her this. He said, if you ever leave me, I will put a bullet in my brain. I'll kill myself. Y'all, this man is sick. So let's get to it. Let's make up our own minds. I'm making up mine. You make up yours on whether this woman is spewing a bunch of BS over the mighty Tim Ballard, who the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has backed for so long, who has published all his books, where Tim Ballard's been getting personal blessings from Russell M. Ballard. Let's find out what AA or Amy has to say. Tim first approached me when I was working late at the office in October of 2022. I was getting ready to leave the office at 7 p.m. and he was there. He told me he was there to film. Later, I found out he was meeting a lady named Lori who also does readings. Tim often called Lori the psychic for advice on many things, operations, lawsuits, and the daily crises of Tim. Tim walked into the office of my boss at the time and shut the door. It was just me and him. He asked me if I was ever interested in doing operations. I said, no way. I was working towards being in aftercare. At this time, I was an employee of OUR. I laughed and said, I don't picture myself breaking down doors in combat boots, as that's the impression that I'd always had with operations. He told me that operations were not all just that, and that there were a lot of female operators, and some of the best operators were female operators. He elaborated and said he was in the middle of an operation and needed help and thought I could help. I didn't talk much, as this was the first one-on-one conversation I had ever had with Tim. And I thought it came out of nowhere, so I was trying to wrap my head around what he was asking and make sense of it. He said there is a case he hopes I could help with in London. When the operation started, the female operator he used couldn't take any more time off of work, and he needed a female partner. He explained that the female partner is there to pose as a girlfriend when they're having conversations at a party. He explained that this operation involved his team encountering a trafficked female, and he needed more information from her. To do that, his operation team was required to fly to London. Tim needed a girlfriend present. This new role would be there to befriend the trafficked girl during the party and while they tried to get the information they needed from her. He said every detail counts, even as small as him returning with a girlfriend. He told me he kept asking God, who should I bring? I need someone who can pull this off. He said he was driving down the road and saw my face, which was crazy because he doesn't even know my name. Then he apologized for not knowing my name. Dimitri, his bodyguard, opened the door, cluing Tim in to get on with it so that he could move along. And Tim asked for my number, and then I went home. The following day, Tim called me and asked if I could fly to San Clementine, California for an operation training. It was the same time that the board meeting was happening. I told him yes. He told me repeatedly that all this needed to be was a secret and it was essential for the operation was on the down low. I didn't find that weird, as no one at OUR talked about operations. It was very secretive. When I got to California, Dimitri picked me up, and Dimitri and I got some lunch, and he checked me into the hotel I was staying in. I remember Dimitri asked, so why did Tim fly you out here? I told him honestly I didn't know how to answer that. Tim told me not to tell anyone or anything, so a few things were going through my mind already. Number one, is this a test? Number two, am I in trouble for flying to California since I'm still so confused about what Tim was asking me to do? And number three, why is Dimitri asking me? Shouldn't he know? Looking back, I can tell now that Dimitri's response was clear, that he was annoyed that I was there. He was annoyed that Tim was up to something. Tim called me when Dimitri and I were getting lunch. There was music in the background, and Tim got mad. Where are you? Why are you not at the hotel? I told him we were finishing lunch and then checked into my hotel. At this time, it was about 2 p.m. Tim told me he would come by my hotel soon. I still didn't ask questions and just said okay. It was approximately 6 p.m. when Tim got into my hotel room. I remember feeling very uncomfortable in the hotel room, alone with another man, and afraid and shy to say anything. I also thought, this is Tim Ballard. I should feel differently. He was explaining roles and operations. I go by Brian Black. When I'm in that role, I will be Brian Black. He started to explain what couples ruse was. 2 operators can block each other in strip clubs or massage parlors. It will cover any suspicion of the operators being the good guys. He gave me an example where if in a strip club, the stripper wants to sit on his lap, his girlfriend can block that from happening by sitting on his lap. Another example was while getting information in massage spas, while getting couples massages, trying to get information. If the traffickers try doing something to either one of the operators, the safe word is "fuck me." And that is the clue to get your partner help in being sexually harassed by saying, "Get out, we want to be alone now." Traffickers can smell pheromones, so we must have real chemistry during the couple's ruse, or the traffickers will call us out. Y'all, this is so ridiculous. Tim said he had rules that there is no kissing or touching private parts if he ever does a couple ruse with anyone. I remember saying, "Is HR going to pop out of the closet?" during this whole conversation, because he didn't say any of this to me before I got to California, and I couldn't believe I was hearing what I was hearing. The role he asked me to play still needed to be clarified. I was led to believe I was helping with a case in London, but not in the context of a couple's ruse in that way. That differs from how it was explained to me in Utah at the office. Essentially, Tim wanted me to befriend a girl that they were trying to save in London that they had already found and believed she was trafficked out of North Korea. Tim continued to talk about massages, and it was all very confusing, but I just wanted to help however I could. When he left, he hugged me and lifted my shirt to look at my stomach. He said he had no idea I had such a hot body because I was always so covered at the office. My back was facing the bed, and it was easy to fall back on it. He pulled me in tighter and kissed my neck. He said that kissing my neck up and down would avoid kissing the lips. He had me lay on my back on the bed and show me how to fake fuck while both our clothes were on. One of the positions he showed me was he wrapped one of my legs over his neck and began to thrust, explaining it would show as if his dick was sliding to me, but going under me without actually going in. He told me another female partner came up with the technique, and it worked all the time. They were able to save hundreds of kids this way. It was so uncomfortable, but I dismissed it because it was Tim Ballard, and what did I know after all? He was the operator. I was someone he was told could help break this huge trafficking ring coming out of North Korea. Tim then left and said he and an operator would return later. He came back a few hours later, but was alone. He told me an operator would follow us in a different car and I wouldn't see him. It was all part of the training. He said they would text him throughout the night and give us tasks. We would need to do them. This shows if I can pass the tasks assigned. We first went to dinner, and he said he got a text that said we needed to get in the hot tub. I told him that was dumb. We were at the Four Seasons in California, and people may recognize him. I did not want to do it, but I did it anyway. When I was in the hot tub, he took his shirt and garment shirt off and mentioned he sees angels all around and that this isn't wrong. Afterward, he took me back to the hotel and I went to bed. He returned to his uncle's house where he was staying. Tim instructed me to keep this information, tactics, or events private from anyone else. The next day, he was in a board meeting most of the day. I was doing strength training with Matt Cooper, which consists of nothing unusual, just workouts on the beach. We ate dinner at Tim's uncle's house that night. I went back to my hotel room alone and then flew home the following day. I'm not aware if anyone else at OUR knew that I was there that weekend or ever knew I was an operator except for the CEO at the time. Brad was fired only a short time after I started doing operations. He texted me one afternoon to check up on me. Tim always wanted me to tell him whoever he was talking to about the operation, so I let him know Brad checked in on me. Tim later told me he called Brad and yelled at him for going around Tim's back. Brad is the CEO, and it could be intimidating for me to get a call from him. That was weird, but again, I ignored it, but ultimately, I was embarrassed. My operations were and always have been a secret. I was led to believe this because operations are confidential. I don't think my boss knew I was going on these operations. I was not allowed to discuss it with him or tell him. This made my job very difficult. I was in all day-to-day business operations and projects. Then at night and weekends, Tim had me doing the Tim Ballard brand and traveling abroad for operations. I didn't get any additional pay. I did not expect or ask, as that was not where my heart was. But I felt Tim was putting me in unfair situations, and I couldn't voice it because he was the founder of R and must have had good intentions. One day you will make lots of money, he would always say, if I would start to bring up any compensation relief, which was never my goal to do. It was making things difficult for me at home. I was always from home more and more with no extra pay or real reason to explain to my husband, FT, that no position title change made sense or why I was doing what I was doing, or salary change, which logically makes sense elsewhere. Simple questions couldn't be answered like, am I covered insurance-wise if I am on an operation? Tim had me spying on everything in the office for him, which made it weird for me relationally, as I was close to everyone. As I said, I was in everyday business operations for 6 months before Tim. There was always something or someone doing wrong to Tim in Tim's eyes, so he wanted to keep me in everything and report back to him, and it burnt me out. The first practice operation. This took place in Guayaquil. Tim was accepting an award, so he thought he could do a practice operation there to make sure I was prepared to go to London and not screw it up. We got checked into the hotel, and he said they ordered a massage to come to the room for a couple's massage. I kept telling him I was so nervous. How does this go? What should I do? What should I say? Who is it? His response was to go with it. There was a knock on the door. Tim opened the door and 2 girls were there to give us a couple's massage. I looked at Tim. He got completely naked and laid on the bed, stomach down. I was wearing black shorts and a blue top. I lay on the bed, belly down with my clothes on. My face was towards his, and he said, "Why don't you take your clothes off?" I said I didn't know I was supposed to, so I sat up and took my shirt off. I laid back down, and the girls gave us massages. I don't speak Spanish, but Tim does. They all were giggling. I asked Tim what they were saying, so it looked like I wanted to be there. Tim turned me on my side and said he was complimenting me on how hot my girlfriend's body is. He would translate what they said to me. He told me he was asking them how much they masturbate, and asked how they masturbate. One of the girls wanted to show him how they masturbate on me. I remember giggling to play the part, and Tim rode me on my back. I remember closing my eyes, wanting it to be over. I didn't remember the safe word then. I was only remembering that I wanted it to be over. I heard Tim say he had never seen this done so close, and he was getting a lesson. I felt fingers inside me when I comprehended that. I stood up and went to the bathroom. I heard the girls leaving. I got in the shower and cried, and Tim came into the bathroom. It was a glass door, and I turned around because I didn't want him to see me or see me cry. But he said, "You did so good. You are such a badass. No female operator did as good as that. We're going to save so many kids," he said. He said he got a name from them that will provide kids, and I should not be sad or feel guilty about anything because we would not have gotten that trafficker's name if I hadn't done anything. None of it made sense. I remember feeling so disgusted with myself and shoving it all away because I just wanted to help, and I thought this is how operations worked. I told him I would be out soon, so he left. I got out of the shower, dressed, cut his hair, and got ready for the night. We all went to the awards ceremony, got on a plane, and flew home. Nothing came of that practice operation. I never heard of checking back in with the trafficker's name that they said they got that night. A practice of operation in Mexico. Tim had CPAC in Mexico. I went with Tim, Dimitri, and Matt Cooper to have another practice leading up to London. Mind you, in between these practice operations, the text messages and constant reminders of how important it is to keep everything a secret were a continual reminder. Everything was for the greater good, the new covenant. We got to Mexico City and we had a 3-bedroom Airbnb. Me, Cooper, and Tim stayed there. They ordered 2 escorts. They told me they heard that one of them knew traffickers. I wasn't sure how the night would go. There was never a real plan. I always asked, and he said it was impossible. It was impossible with operations. We had a goal, but besides that, we just got to improvise. I found comfort in not speaking Spanish. It took the pressure off me slightly. The 2 escorts came over. I stayed in my room for a few minutes. Tim showed me off as his girlfriend when I walked into the living room. The party continued. There was alcohol and just conversations going. I was asking Tim to ask them questions for me. What do they do for work? What is it like being an escort? How much money do they get paid? Tim told them I was interested in being an escort, but I elaborated in letting them know that I didn't know how to do that sort of thing. I was using that as a defense in getting out of what I felt was coming, which was Tim wanting to be alone with Julie in the back bedroom. My saying I didn't know how to do that work got me in a worse position. Tim said, let's just teach you. I didn't have a choice. We all walked to the back bedroom. Tim lay on the bed, and Julie got completely naked and crawled on Tim. She was talking to Tim, telling him to tell me, guys like this, guys like that. I kept my clothes on and sat on the bed. She asked Tim why I was shy and still had all my clothes on, and Tim asked, and I said to tell her, because I don't know how to do any of this, remember? The other escort that came into the bedroom and allowed us to break up the sex escort training session. When they left, Tim asked her about the kids and traffickers they knew, elaborated and said she could help get us information. She wanted to return the following night, but hang out with just me. The second night in Mexico. That night it was just me, and they don't say who it is, it's redacted. I elaborated on the character as the girlfriend wanting to become an escort, just asking her questions, becoming friends, but ultimately seeing if I could get any information about the traffickers she allegedly knew. As I talked to her, I told her I owed Brian, i.e. Tim Ballard, a lot of money, so I needed to become an escort like her. How do I do it? She told me I needed to get in these groups, and to do that, I needed to provide boudoir photos, which are basically naked photos, y'all. She also said she could provide kids sold in these groups on WhatsApp. I could get in these groups and meet the traffickers if I provided naked pictures of myself. Tim was all for the pictures being done. I got the pictures of myself and sent them to Julie, and Julie sent them to her WhatsApp groups. So now let's go to the London op that Tim Ballard was practicing with AA or Amy. Let's see how that goes, y'all. By the time London was there, Tim had me looking online at escorts anywhere we went, wanted me to order them for the night in hopes we could get any information on trafficked kids. He was convinced the new way to find trafficked kids was through these escorts. Tim had me make my profile pages with escort agency ads with my naked photos. He had me book escorts for every night we were in London. 2 escorts came one night, and he told me to wait down at the bar for 20 minutes. I wonder what happens in 20 minutes, y'all. When I got upstairs, they had just gotten out of the shower. The girls were surprised that I came, so they left. and I was relieved. The next night, another escort came. He told me to wait downstairs at the bar for 20 minutes. I was downstairs with Cooper and told him I didn't feel this was right. I don't know how much about operations, but why must he be alone with escorts? I walked upstairs. Tim was in a robe on the bed with the escort. I walked over to the escort and started talking to her like she was a friend, which ultimately killed the mood. I befriended her, as that was my role for the London operation anyway. So I felt good enough to do that instead of engaging in anything sexually, and I did not have anything in me. The real operation in London. We had one big suite and hotel rooms. The big suite is where the party's going to take place. The objective of this operation was to get additional information from this girl to confirm she is currently getting trafficked. To do that, we also needed to order her through her agency. So we did that, and she then met Cooper at his hotel room. Tim and I came in. I was introduced as his girlfriend. We talked about these massages and such, and he was explaining where these massages were given. He had me straddle his lap, and he was demonstrating where each of these massages was going to be put on me. Then he said we're going to take a shower. It was almost a production. We walked into the bathroom. He turned the shower on and made sex noises to make the individual think we were having sex in the shower. We got out and walked upstairs to the party to get the needed information. Once the night was over, we were happy she provided the information, but there's always been one major factor that never made sense to me. Why did I need all these practice operations, including things that didn't come close to what he had me do before London, for London to be a success? After London, and it's redacted, a name wants me to meet up with us because she has information. The operation started terribly from the beginning. We missed our flights and our luggage was rerouted to another state. We arrived in Mexico City late at night, but still met Julie and two of her Ukrainian escort friends, which been working out. This case had been working out for a few months. The point of this meeting was to get more info from this person because she kept saying she had friends who were selling kids in escort group chats on WhatsApp. Tim wanted to bring the Ukrainian escorts because he was working on a case from Ukraine. And before they left, Tim told them to come back the following night, which led to having to get more money for their time. The following morning, we met with a public official. I left the meeting early to see if our bags were back at the hotel and to withdraw more pesos to pay for the two Russian girls while Tim and Matt Osborne stayed at the meeting. When Tim and Matt were on their way to the hotel we were staying at, I told them I would be late due to traffic. I was already texting this person, letting her know to go to the bar to buy time so Tim and Matt didn't need to be alone with them in the room. I was under the impression that any operation would start once all the pieces were in place. When I got to the hotel, the girls, Tim and Matt Osborne, had already been in the hotel room. Tim and this person were on their way down alone to the hot tub. The three of us crossed paths as I was getting off the elevator, and they were getting on the elevator to go down to the hot tub. I was taken aback by the situation they created for the whole day, and I was disgusted. I remember testing Tim with the statement, "I will come," and he said it was just going to be the two of them. I share this because it debunks the couple's ruse. Tim and this woman would be in a hot tub alone. Matt Osborne was alone in a hotel room with two other girls when I was supposed to be their blocker. This was more of a get-together, as me and Julie had essentially already developed a friendship over the past months. Still, I thought I shouldn't voice this with the bit of experience I have in this operation. We had 2 rooms and 1 suite we were all meeting. One regular room right next door. Matt Osborne was in the suite with the other 2 girls, and I was too upset to go in there for various reasons. I had been alone in Mexico City trying to get pesos out for Tim, We met with a potential trafficker the night before in the hotel we were staying at. The operation started without all things in place, as discussed. All my personal information was being exposed via the front desk. Therefore, the TV was on when I entered the room because they were ordering room service and playing music. My actual name was on the TV, not my undercover name. These women came over with the impression that they were being paid for sex, but I believed we were paying for their information. I believed we had a plan in place so sex wouldn't be involved. Tim going off alone with one escort was so unnecessary. That debunked the couple's ruse. After seeing Tim go to the hot tub with the escort alone, I walked into the regular hotel room to regroup. I texted Matt Osborne to let him know I was back, and he asked me to give him 5 more minutes. I thought that was strange. I chose to dismiss, thinking he was just in a conversation getting information. When 5 minutes was up, I knocked on the door. Matt had makeup on his face, leading me to believe he was kissing one of the girls. Shortly after I arrived in the room, Matt got a text from Tim. Tim asked if we could all leave the room because he and this woman were on their way up from the hot tub and he needed a little longer with her. So Matt, the 2 girls, and I went to the restaurant downstairs. It was approximately 30 minutes, and then Tim texted Matt and said they were done and we could come on up. We all got upstairs and Tim had a robe on. The shower glass doors had water on them and her bathing suit was on the floor by the window. Matt Osborne left almost right away. I talked with the girls for about 10 minutes and they all left. Tim told me immediately that he found himself in a tricky spot. I remember listening with disgust. He then said she wanted to have sex with him so bad, and when she went to get the condom, he hurried and masturbated. So by the time she either turned around or walked back, he was able to tell her he couldn't have sex anymore. He told her, "You're just so hot. I just had to do this instead, and I'm so sorry." In doing all that, he said he got information that she wanted to meet up in Playa del Carmen, where her friends are selling kids. I didn't respond to him on any of this. I remember being unable to say anything. After a couple of awkward seconds of silence, he got an ignorant and rude attitude. I remember he said to the effect that I should be grateful because he just had to sacrifice needing to do something like that to get the information from Julie. I also remember feeling bad because we were there and the plan was to try and get information from her differently. I didn't deliver though, so I was grateful he got the news, so hopefully we can save kids now. He then elaborated on how much he had lost and sacrificed, and now remember feeling bad. I feel bad for accusing him of doing something wrong or judging him, leading me to ignore and forget what happened until now. So in January, I told Tim he needed a team of people to rally around him to help with how busy his life is. He needs more employees. I suggested 2 individuals that I already knew from the office. These individuals had been with OUR since the beginning, and I thought he could trust them no matter what. He created a department called Founders Group. They had kickoff meetings at our Miami office over the weekend in January, and when he returned, he told me he would take one of the individuals on an upcoming operation. I told him I did not think it was a good idea, but Tim knows best. He works off of instinct, and that was that. The operation he was taking her on was the takedown of a 3-year process finally ending. It was also strange taking someone on there at such high risk with the potential of compromising and losing any of it. I was going to go to Mexico 2 days earlier to finish the operation with 2 other operators. I was going to see Tim and these other individuals for just 1 day before I went home, and they went on to start their operation. Tim and this individual arrived at the safe house alone, which implied they traveled alone to Playa del Carmen, where we were all staying. I was checking in with Tim's new female partner, and she seemed good, and Tim did the final meeting with Julie and me, and nothing came of this. Fast forward to mid-March, Tim, myself, and OUR development team were in Miami for a speaking fundraising event and gala. Tim always liked filling the time when we were traveling, so he pulled a list of escorts near the area, and he wanted to do some Operation Bodyguard tactics. There were 2 other operators as well to help with this operation and accompanied Tim's security. We rented a 3-bedroom condo and 1 other condo in the same building. Right before the speaking event, Tim got a call informing him that his lawyer, Brent Anderson, was flying into Miami to inform him that the individual he brought to Mexico in February had filed a complaint. He wanted to be with him personally to tell him the news. Tim was so upset, dry heaving and throwing up. He gathered himself up enough to speak at the event and return to the condo. By that time, Brent was there. The 3 of us talked briefly, and Tim was very detailed about what had happened that whole week with him and that other individual. He claimed his innocence and that nothing had happened. Then Tim brought this operator and Tim's security for the weekend to speak on how operations work. Tim told me not to have this person come to the condo until he told me to. He was always particular with details. I never knew why this person was not able to be there when Brent arrived. Brent put Tim's mind at ease, letting him know that they would do any investigation so that they were covered if anything came back in the future. They could say they performed an investigation and Tim was innocent, which makes sense. Once we got back to Utah, all my updates on the investigation came from Tim. I was working from the Linden office and traveling a lot. I never saw anyone from the main office. Tim kept asking me to write a complaint letter to OUR regarding sexual harassment and harassment against OUR because the individual lied about me when this happened. Earlier, she had told me that people in the office were uncomfortable with me being an employee, but later recanted and told the investigators that was untrue. This allowed Tim to tell me that this individual is jealous of me as a fellow employee, leaving it accessible for him to cause tension and mistrust between me and this individual. I never wrote a complaint to OUR or told Tim I didn't. I talked to the HR department one time. The conversation consisted of me expressing confusion with the whole situation, and I couldn't wait for it all to be over, but that was it. Again, these people were my friends. Tim told me he repeatedly would ask Catherine to write a complaint to OUR. He told me she didn't want to. He called me one day from his car. He was reading her complaint to me out loud, but I could tell he was erasing and editing sentences as he was reading it out loud. I told him he should not turn it in, and then I got off the phone. That was none of my business. Tim had me out of the main office when the investigation started, and I was not talking to anyone except him. Tim painted the narrative for me and even resigned for me. He isolated me, making sure I had no access to information. He told me what to say. Excuse me, y'all. I remember answering questions, but still leaving out things I remember now. He coached me on all the things he wanted me to say. He convinced me that the individual was lying. He went as far as saying that the individual was obsessed with him. She wanted to marry him, be his wife when he was the president of the United States, and physically hurt Catherine. He told me she was trying to put cookies on his doorstep to poison Catherine. He painted her out to be this crazy person who became obsessed with him during an operation, and he couldn't escape her. He said all they did was hold hands. I knew if I elaborated on anything in my interview, it would ruin OUR. All operations would stop, and no kids would be saved. It came time for my interview with the investigator in charge of the case. That day, Tim called me all day. He wanted to meet to ensure I was prepped. I never did. He was constantly repeating, no drinking on operations, no kissing or touching private parts, over and over and over again. I remember telling him I didn't need coaching. As I would say, I stuck to the narrative that Tim painted for me. In February of 2023, by this time I am an undercover operator and employee. I understood that my boss and HR finally knew I was doing operations. OUR and Tim thought it made sense to move me to be only with Tim since I do operations and have been doing tasks already for Tim. I was hesitant but hopeful for a simpler schedule and better work-life balance, which had greatly affected my marriage and home life. Between travel and being at Tim's Linden office, I was not at the main office that much. Tim was sorting out issues between himself and OUR, and I was getting all my updates through Tim and no one else. I slowly lost all contact with everyone at OUR as I was just busy with everything about Tim. Koreatown, California, December through July of 2023. Tim said he was getting intel from spas coming out of Koreatown, so we made a couple of trips there and visited some spas to see if there was anything we could come across. We walked into the spa and asked for a couples massage. They didn't do them, so he ordered one for me. Tim said he would wait for me in the waiting room. Now, the spa was tiny, 3 rooms and a waiting room. It was all close enough to where I could hear everything happening. I went into the room, undressed, got under the covers, and lay on my stomach. The girl came into to massage me. I could hear Tim talking to the other girls at the front desk, which kept me at ease. I asked the girl a couple of questions, but halfway through the massage, Tim was gone. Another worker came in and told the current girl to leave. She told me to turn over so she could massage my feet. A few minutes into the foot massage, I glanced down because I saw the light. I caught the girl recording pictures or video right up the sheet as she gave me a foot massage. I noticed the door was open 3 inches, so when I went to move and asked what was happening, the manager walked in and started cleaning up to distract everything. I didn't dare stick up for myself when I caught the girl recording her taking pictures of me because I was left alone in the spa with 3 of the potential traffickers, and I was supposed to act like I would like that, but I didn't have a way out of it since I didn't have my blocker. I got dressed and sat in the waiting area for another 10 minutes until Tim returned to pick me up. I asked him where he went. I was upset because he was never supposed to leave me alone, and he told me he went to find more spas. February 2023 to June 2023, I moved over to being all things Tim Ballard, employee and operator. He would constantly tell me I was the best operator. No one had done operations like me before. We were going to save so many kids. He had never trusted anyone as much as he trusted me, and everyone had betrayed him. He said he would put a bullet in his brain if I ever brought up the need to move positions. I handled all personal Tim Ballard brand and operations. I was prepping for the Sound of Freedom tour and speaking gigs. Tim was also trying to implement Operation Bodyguard, which consists of couples or 2 operators going undercover anywhere, spas, clubs, ordering escorts to rooms, and trying to get intel from them. He was convinced that escorts were the way to get all the information on human trafficking and that the couple's ruse would thrive through Operation Bodyguard. He was planning the initial training in the Dominican Republic and had me reaching out to couples of his choice to coordinate a time to get there. This never happened. June of 2023 to September of 2023, y'all. This is just last month. Tim was telling people he resigned from OUR because there would be a conflict with the Sound of Freedom, and he wanted to start the Spear Fund. I always felt weird about that because I was with him on June 9th when he got his termination letter from OUR's board members, and OUR, he never gave me clear information. He kept me so busy with tasks and me just consoling him daily that I didn't even have the mental capacity to think about getting logical answers to anything I asked. Suppose I did ask a question that deserved a logical explanation. Tim always responded with a crisis he was dealing with, so the subject would be different, and we would then be talking about him again and fixing anything he needed, or complimenting him, telling him it's all going to be okay. I would then feel bad for whatever he was going through and for asking such questions. I personally never had a conversation with OUR about resigning myself. Tim did it all for me. I was under the impression that I was only leaving to work for Tim. I was told OUR was giving Tim / the Spear Fund a year's grant to cover my salary, and Tim or Spear Fund had not paid me. I have not received any salary while working with Tim or the Spear Fund, only partial reimbursements. When I got a separation and a release agreement, the wording needed to be more apparent because nothing was adding up. After all, I thought I was only resigning and not being terminated. My husband was the one who brought this to my attention when he read the fine print. There were things in there mentioning I was not rehireable. Why is that? I asked Tim and didn't get clear answers. I don't believe I was given a fair chance of leaving OUR in a friendly manner. I never knew Tim's narrative, as I could not be involved in any of the conversations. I've been violated and taken advantage of while working in a day-to-day business operation task of OUR. I was an operator, I was an employee, while all being asked to keep it secret from everyone I knew. Never mention it to anyone. No one understands. This is for the greater good in the new covenant. We had to be married in past lives, he would say. I resigned from OUR under a narrative that I had no control over. Tim kept me so busy and isolated from all the other operators that I never had a chance to understand true operations and all the right protocols. I was never able to have any communication with them once I left the Spear Fund to understand the full scope of what was going on. OUR knew the total capacity of what I was being exposed to and did not care to reach out to me in any way this whole time. Instead, they did the opposite, keeping me in operations and putting me in the role of being more available to Tim Ballard. I believe Tim had me join the Spear Fund as a cover to protect himself from these other women he knows he violated for his gain. Tim had a habit of asking me to cover for him on many things. One in particular was asking me to take blame for dirty text messages he said was a tactic that we used in operations on burner phones. He was always so worried that they would leak out. Over the past year, I have distanced myself from all my friends and family, thinking it was because I was so busy with work. Still, it was because I couldn't relate to anyone in a normal conversation with the things Tim was having me do, that this was in the name of God, through revelation and saving children. This happened through Tim's mind games and manipulation, his guilt trips, his last-minute crisis, especially when I would speak my mind. I felt I needed to clean up all of Tim's crises that he would throw at me, even when it would supersede my family and personal life. Working for Tim has cost me relationships, my marriage, and time away from my family for 1 year. I've burned bridges for this man without knowing it. I've gone into debt for him, and when I would bring it up, it always would come back to a personal crisis Tim was going through. I would feel guilty, says this woman named AA. And because she felt guilty of everything, along with even asking for a paycheck. I never received a single paycheck since June, or the covering his expenses this year. Since I resigned, I've been able to breathe and realize this was all mind games and manipulation for his personal gain that I will never, ever understand. Now, does anyone want to tell me what, does anyone see the absolute devastation of what these damn assholes try to do in the name of their religion and everything else? They want to take advantage of people. You cannot put confidence in man. That is my message. And this Tim Ballard there are going to be more and more lawsuits filed. And I do not believe that these women are all lying. I think some of them were stupid enough to believe that everything Tim was having them to do, they could have said no at any time. But they continued in it because he held this over their head. Mr. I have gotten the okay from Russell and Ballard for the couple's ruse. I'm going to be the prophet one day. I'm going to be the president of the United States one day. I am special. This is a new covenant. Well, Tim Ballard can kiss old KJ's country ass. Leave your comments, y'all. Let me know what you think. Y'all, I do everything with purpose. You cannot put confidence in man. Confidence in man to do what? Tell other people that God is telling them to do these things. You can tell. You can test the spirits. You can see the fruit, whether it's rotten-ass fruit or good fruit coming from someone. God would never ask these women to do these things. And God would never want Tim Ballard to do these things. So with that being said, y'all, keep on looking.